Ever wonder how the souls of your lost loved ones say goodbye? What if they're sending signs you'll never notice? I died for 4 minutes in Chicago's icy snow on New Year's 2025. And what I saw, God, my dad from afar, and 3 secrets about how souls part ways will keep you up at night. Are you missing the final words from the one you loved most? I'm Emily Carter, 31 years old, and if you'd asked me a year ago whether I believed the souls of the dead try to say goodbye, I'd have laughed in your face. I grew up in Chicago, in a regular Catholic family, going to church every Sunday, but that spiritual stuff, I didn't buy it. Yet here I am, typing these words, because one New Year's Eve in 2025 changed everything. The night I died for 4 minutes under Chicago's freezing snow, and came back with 3 secrets I can't keep to myself. But before I get to that, I need to take you back to December 2024, when my life fell apart. That winter in Chicago was merciless. Snow fell thick, blanketing every street, and the wind howled through my small apartment's windows like it wanted to tear everything down. I sat in my old armchair, staring out through the frosted glass. Across the street, houses glowed with Christmas lights, red, green, gold, twinkling like postcard scenes. Kids shouted with joy, dragging sleds through the snow, and somewhere, in the distance, church bells rang out, "O come, all ye faithful." But inside my place, no lights, no tree, no laughter. Just me, alone, with the cold seeping into my bones and a loneliness pressing hard against my chest. My dad, John Carter, died on December 15th, 2024. Lung cancer took him after 6 months of fighting. I still remember the day he called me from the hospital, his voice raspy from decades of smoking. He said, "Doc found something in my lungs. Probably no big deal." I told him to get it checked again, keeping my tone steady, but deep down, I knew it was bad. And it was. Chemo stripped his hair away, his skin wrinkled like old paper, and the hands that once fixed plumbing across the neighborhood trembled, barely able to hold a glass. The big man who'd belt out jingle bells every Christmas was now just a frail shadow on a hospital bed. The day he died, I was there, in a room reeking of antiseptic. The heart monitor beeped, slowing with each tick, then flatlined. I held his hand, feeling his bony fingers grow cold. I wanted to say something. "I love you," or just "goodbye." But my throat locked up. His eyes closed, the machine went silent, and he was gone. I stood there, frozen, as the nurse pulled a white sheet over him. No farewell, no final hug, just a silence that stabbed my heart. After the funeral, I came home with a wooden box of Dad's things, a Christmas sweater he loved, half a pack of cigarettes, and a Polaroid of us by the tree when I was 10. We Americans don't set up altars like some cultures, but I put that box on my bookshelf, a way to keep Dad close. My mom, now living in Ohio with my aunt, called weekly, asking if I was okay. I always said fine, though we both knew it was a lie. I wasn't fine. I was lonely, lost, and each day, the winter cold sank deeper into me. Christmas 2024 came quietly. I didn't hang lights, play music, or bake cookies like Dad used to. I just sat there, staring at his box, wondering why I didn't say goodbye when I had the chance. I remembered old Christmases, when Dad set up the tree in the living room, spun Bing Crosby records, and sang White Christmas off-key. I remembered the faint tobacco smell on his coat when he hugged me, telling Santa stories. Now, it was all just memories, and I didn't know how to live without him. On December 31st, New Year's Eve 2025, I couldn't take it anymore. The world was counting down, celebrating, while I sat in my dark apartment, hearing distant fireworks. I opened the bottle of whiskey Dad left in the cabinet, his game day drink, and poured a full glass. I drank, not to savor, but to forget. 1 glass, then 2, then 3. I mumbled to myself, "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have said something." But Dad didn't answer, and the whiskey didn't erase the pain. I glanced at the clock. 11:45. Fireworks boomed closer. Voices yelled, "Happy New Year!" through the walls. I didn't want to be here, didn't want to hear others' joy, while my heart was breaking. I stood, grabbed my coat, my keys. I need to get out, I told myself, though I knew I was drunk. I didn't plan to go far, just drive around, let the cold snap me out of this nightmare. I didn't know that drive would take me somewhere no one wants to go, the line between life and death. I stepped outside, snow falling heavier, wind whipping flakes into my face. My car was parked a few yards away, dusted with a thin layer. I climbed in, started it, turned on the heat. My breath fogged in the frigid air. I drove off, no destination, just wanting to escape the apartment, the memories, myself. The streets were empty, save for a few cars passing, their headlights dim, in the snow. I flipped on the radio, but the festive tunes grated on me, so I shut it off. Just the engines hum and the winds howl outside. I don't know how long I drove, maybe 20 minutes, maybe more. The whiskey spun my head, blurred my eyes. A traffic light ahead turned red, but I didn't stop. I didn't see the pickup truck barreling from the intersection until it was too late. Glass shattered, metal crunched. My body jolted forward, then back. Pain, cold, then nothing. My last thought, "Dad, I'm coming to you." Then darkness swallowed me. I didn't know what death would be like. No one does, right? But when that pickup slammed into my car on New Year's Eve 2025, when glass shattered and blood ran down my coat, I thought it was over. And in that final moment, I only thought of Dad. He died in December 2024, and I figured I'd see him soon. I was wrong. What came wasn't eternal darkness or the heaven the church talks about, but a strange void where I stood outside my own body, and everything started to shift. The crash still echoed in my head, though I didn't feel pain anymore. I opened my eyes, or thought I did, and saw something unreal. My car lay tilted on the road, windshield smashed, white snow mixing with red blood on the driver's seat. I saw my body, limp, head slumped on the wheel, blood trickling from my forehead to my chin, but I wasn't in it. I stood a few steps away, hovering, like a ghost watching myself die. Sirens wailed in the distance, headlights cut through the snow, and I heard shouts, "She's not breathing! Hurry!" Panic hit me. I wanted to scream, to run and shake my body, but I couldn't move like I wanted. My feet didn't touch the ground, and my body, or whatever I was now, felt light. As air, I looked at my hands. Hazy, faintly glowing, no longer flesh. Am I dead? I asked myself, my voice ringing in my head but not out loud. I turned back to the car, saw the rescue team rush in, yank the door open, lift me onto a stretcher. A man in white gloves yelled, "No pulse! Start compressions!" They pressed my chest, hard and fast, but I felt nothing. Snow kept falling, slow, like time had stopped. I looked around, trying to make sense of it. Chicago's streets were eerily quiet now. The New Year's fireworks faded, just the wind howling, and the rescuers working. I thought of Dad, how he'd died in the hospital, the heart monitor flatlining, and I didn't get to say goodbye. "Dad," I whispered in my mind. "I'm here now. Where are you?" I hoped he'd appear, arms open like in the movies, but nothing. Just me, floating between life and death, with my body lying there, growing cold. Then something shifted. I felt a warmth, not from the wind or snow, but from deep inside, or rather, from outside me, pulling me. I looked up, saw a small light, far off, not blinding like people say, but soft, like the Christmas candles Dad used to light in the living room. The light grew, and I felt myself drawn to it, unable to resist. My body, the corpse on the stretcher, faded behind me. The rescuers' voices dimmed, and I drifted into a different space. No longer Chicago. I didn't know where I was. No walls, no floor. Just that gentle light surrounding me, and a strange peace I'd never felt before. I wasn't scared anymore. Wasn't hurting over Dad. Just curious. What is this? I wondered. Heaven can't be this simple, can it? I'd grown up with church stories of golden gates and angels, but this wasn't that. It was empty, but not lonely, like a pause between breaths. Then I heard a voice, not from one spot, but everywhere, deep and warm, like Dad's when he told old stories, but bigger, richer. "Emily!" it called, and I startled. I spun around, searching for the source, but saw no one. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice actually sounding now, not just in my head. "Emily," it repeated, "you're not done yet." My heart, or whatever passed for one in this state, pounded. I knew this wasn't Dad's voice, but it felt familiar, like a distant memory from Sunday prayers. The light before me brightened, and a presence appeared. Not clear, not human, but a being radiating power and compassion I couldn't describe. I saw no face, no limbs, just living light, and I knew instantly who it was. "God?" I whispered, voice trembling. I wasn't some religious nut, but growing up Catholic, you learn to recognize this feeling. He didn't answer directly, but I felt a confirmation, like an unseen nod. "Am I dead?" I asked, glancing back at where my body was now a speck in the snow. "Not quite," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're in between. I'm showing you this because you need to understand." I frowned, or thought I did, unsure if I still had a face. "Understand what?" I asked. He didn't reply right away. Instead, the light shifted, and before me, a scene emerged. I asked. He didn't reply right away. Instead, the light shifted, and before me, a scene emerged. I saw Dad. He stood there, some distance away, on a snowy field shimmering under faint light. He wore his old Christmas sweater, the one he'd put on to set up the tree, and he smiled. Not the weak smile from his hospital bed, but the strong, bright one from when I was little. "Dad!" I shouted, rushing toward him, but I couldn't move. An invisible wall held me back, and I pounded it, tears spilling, or what felt like tears, since I had no body to cry with. "He can't come closer," God said, his voice beside me. "But he said goodbye to you, in the way of souls." I turned, looked at him, then back at Dad. "Goodbye?" I echoed, voice breaking. "I didn't hear anything. I didn't get to say goodbye when he died." He paused, then said, "You don't need ears to hear. Souls speak differently, and I'll show you 3 secrets about that." I stood there, stunned, watching Dad from afar. He waved, a small gesture, then turned, walking into the light. I wanted to run after him, hug him, say the words I didn't in the hospital, but I couldn't. I just stood, watching him vanish, a mix of pain and peace flooding me. "Wait," I whispered. "Don't go." But he was gone, and God spoke. "Now you'll learn to hear that goodbye. Be ready." I stood there, hovering in that gentle light, watching my dad vanish into the glow ahead. His smile, his small wave, burned into my mind. But I couldn't reach him, couldn't say the words I'd held back since he died. December 15th, 2024. I'm Emily Carter, 31, and in the 4 minutes I died under Chicago's icy snow on New Year's, 2025, I faced God, who just promised to show me 3 secrets about how souls say goodbye. I didn't know what to expect, but when he spoke again, everything I'd believed about death started to crumble. "Don't you understand?" I asked, voice trembling, turning to the radiant presence of God. "Dad's gone. I didn't get to say goodbye, and now you say he did. I didn't hear anything." I felt angry, helpless, like a kid left in a blizzard. To me, a goodbye was a word, a hug, a clear moment, like when Dad hugged me at the garage door and said, "See ya, Em," every time I visited. But here there was none of that. God stayed quiet for a moment, then his voice came, deep and patient. "Emily, what do you think a goodbye is? A sound, a touch? That's the way of the living. Souls aren't bound by bodies, and they speak differently." I frowned, or thought I did, still unsure what shape I had in this place. "Differently?" I echoed, skeptical. "What do you mean?" The light before me shifted, and a new scene appeared. I saw the hospital room where Dad died, the antiseptic smell, the heart monitor slowing, me holding his hand as he took his last breath. But this time, I saw what I'd missed. A faint glow, like thin smoke, rose from his body. As his eyes closed, it hovered, then drifted to me, brushing my shoulder lightly, like a winter breeze. I hadn't felt it then, too busy crying, too busy blaming myself. But now I saw it clear. It was Dad, or his soul, saying goodbye. "This is the first secret," God said, his voice echoing through the space. "Souls leave the body through an invisible silver cord, and when it breaks, they send their energy to those they love. Not words, not the touch you know, but a feeling, a sign you can miss if you don't pay attention." I stood stunned, watching it. "But I didn't feel anything," I whispered. "I just felt pain." "You didn't feel it because you weren't listening," he replied. "Your pain was louder than your love then. But your dad was there, right beside you, sending his goodbye through that energy." I looked back at the scene, saw the glow fade into the air after touching me. I wanted to cry, but there were no tears here, just a deep regret for missing that moment. Then the light shifted again. I saw myself, days after Dad's funeral, sitting in my dark Chicago apartment. I held his Christmas sweater, clutching it to my chest, sobbing. But this time, I saw something else. A cold breeze blew through the room, though the windows were shut, and I felt a light touch on my shoulder, like an unseen hand. Back then, I'd thought it was just the wind, just my mind, but now I knew it was Dad. The second secret, God said, is that souls don't leave right away. They linger for a while, reaching out to loved ones through small signs, a breeze, a dream, a sudden warmth. Your dad tried to tell you he wasn't far, but you were lost in sorrow. I nodded slowly, recalling odd moments after he died. Once I'd dreamed he stood at the door, waving, but I woke thinking it was just longing. Now I knew it wasn't a dream. What about Mom? I asked, thinking of her in Ohio. Did he say goodbye to her? The light moved again, and I saw Mom in Aunt Linda's house. She sat by the window, watching snow fall, when a wind chime, a gift from Dad years ago, rang out with no breeze. She smiled, whispering, "John, is that you?" I turned to God, amazed. He did that? Yes, he said. Your dad sent signs to everyone he loved. You, your mom, even old friends at the garage. Souls aren't limited by distance or time. That's how they say goodbye. Warmth washed over me. Not from the light, but from knowing Dad hadn't left me alone. Then he said, "The third secret is what you need most to keep living." The light flared brighter, and I saw a new scene. Not the past, but the future. I saw myself in a Chicago church, speaking to a group of older folks. I told them about Dad, the signs he sent, and they listened, eyes lighting up as they recalled their own moments. An old woman said, "I smelled my mom's perfume after she passed." A man added, "I dreamed of my son, and he smiled." I smiled back, saying, "That's how they say goodbye to us." This is the third secret, God said. A soul's goodbye isn't to end things, but to help you live. Your dad wants you to know he's still here, in his way, so you're not afraid or alone anymore. I watched that scene, feeling tears, or something like them, well up. Then why can't I hug him? I asked, voice breaking. Why can't I say I love him? You don't need arms to hug, he replied. Your love spoke for you, and he heard it. But now you must go back, take these secrets to others. I jolted. Go back? I repeated. You mean I'm not dead? He didn't answer directly, just said, You'll see. The light began to fade, and I felt myself pulled back, not toward Dad, but toward my body, toward Chicago's cold snow. I wanted to stay, to ask more, but his voice rang out one last time. Listen, Emily. The goodbyes are always there, if you open your heart. Then I fell, fast and hard, like plunging through a dark tunnel. I felt myself falling, not free-falling, like off a building, but pulled back fast and hard through a dark tunnel. God's last words. Listen, Emily. The goodbyes are always there, if you open your heart. Echoed in my mind as the gentle light faded. I'm Emily Carter, 31, and after 4 minutes clinically dead under Chicago's icy snow on New Year's, 2025, I was no longer with God or Dad. I was coming back, though I didn't want to, because what I'd just seen, Dad waving, the 3 secrets of how souls say goodbye, made me want to stay forever. But I didn't get to choose. The dark tunnel swept me along, wind roaring past my ears like when I drove that night. I tried to hold on to the memory of Dad, his smile on that snowy field, but it blurred away. Then suddenly, I felt heavy, no longer floating, no longer light. A sharp pain stabbed my chest like a knife, and I heard a shout, "She's got a pulse! Keep going!" I opened my eyes, really opened them this time, and saw blinding white light from an ambulance ceiling. An oxygen mask pressed on my face. A man in a reflective jacket pounded my chest, sweat dripping down his brow. Panic surged. I tried to move, but my limbs were lead. "She's awake!" another voice yelled, and I heard machines beeping faster. I wanted to say something. I just saw God. I saw my dad. But my throat was dry, only a groan escaping. The man stopped compression, staring at me with wide eyes. "You okay? Can you hear me?" he asked, urgent. I nodded weakly, though I wasn't sure I was okay. My head spun, my chest ached like I'd been hit again, but I was alive. The ambulance jolted along, sirens piercing the snow. I caught snippets. 4 minutes, no heartbeat. She's a miracle. I closed my eyes, trying to recall what happened. Dad standing there, waving, and God revealing the 3 secrets. The silver cord when souls leave, the small signs they send, the purpose to keep me living. I wanted to believe it was real, not a whiskey-fueled hallucination or crash trauma, but the warmth from that light lingered in me, undeniable proof. The hospital was chaos when they wheeled me in. Nurses rushed around, machines blared, and I lay there, hearing doctors mutter, broken ribs, mild head trauma, but surviving 4 minutes without a pulse is unbelievable. I whispered to myself, not unbelievable. God sent me back. I didn't say it aloud, afraid they'd think I was crazy, but I knew it was true. I'd died, seen Dad, and now I was alive with a mission, to bring those 3 secrets to others, like he said. The next, hours blurred. They x-rayed me, bandaged me, gave me painkillers. I lay there, staring at the hospital ceiling, thinking of Dad. I remembered him on his deathbed, that last hand squeeze, and now I knew he'd sent a goodbye through that glow I hadn't seen then. I whispered, "I heard you, Dad. Sorry I didn't notice sooner." A nurse walked in, checked my IV, asked, "Who are you talking to?" I smiled faintly. "My dad." I left the hospital 2 days later, January 2nd, 2025. Snow still fell outside, but it didn't feel as cold. I wore my coat, carried a small bag, car keys, wallet, the shattered whiskey bottle the rescuers found. They handed me a paper saying my car was totaled, sent for repairs. I didn't care. I just wanted to get home, sit with Dad's memory, box, and start listening, like God told me. My apartment was unchanged from when I left New Year's Eve. Dark, cold, a faint whiskey scent in the air. I dropped my bag, went straight to the bookshelf where Dad's wooden box sat. I opened. It pulled out his Christmas sweater, held it close. This time I didn't cry. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and waited. A soft breeze, so soft, brushed through the room, though the windows were shut. I smiled. "That you, Dad?" I whispered. No reply, but I felt an unseen touch on my shoulder, like that night after his funeral. Now I knew what it was. Dad's goodbye. I sat in my armchair, clutching the sweater, thinking of God's words. The third secret, that a soul's goodbye helps me live, rang in my mind. I'd survived, not by chance, but because I had work to do. I opened a drawer, grabbed an old notebook, and started writing. January 1st, 2025, I wrote. I died 4 minutes and came back with 3 secrets. Secret 1. Souls send energy when they leave. Secret 2. They linger through small signs. Secret 3. They want me to keep living. I paused, looked at the words, whispered, I'll do it, God. I'll tell them. That night, I lay in bed, hearing wind howl outside. I dreamed of Dad, clearer than ever. He stood in snow, wearing his Christmas sweater, waving and saying, Em, I'm okay. You gotta be okay too, all right? I woke, tears rolling down my cheeks, but I wasn't sad. I smiled, wiped them away, whispered, I'm okay, Dad. Thank you. It was the first time I'd felt peace since he died. The next day, I called Mom in Ohio. Mom, I said, voice shaky, I've got something to tell you. She went quiet, then asked, What, Emily? I took a breath, told her everything. The crash, 4 minutes dead, God, Dad, the 3 secrets. She cried over the phone, but not from sorrow. I felt him too, she said. New Year's Eve, the wind chime rang, no breeze. I knew it was John. I laughed, tears falling again. That was Dad, Mom. He's not far. I hung up, looked out the window. Snow kept falling, but I wasn't alone anymore. I knew Dad was there. In the wind, the dreams, the little moments. And I knew I had to live differently. No more whiskey, no more running. I had to bring this story to others, like God wanted, so they could hear goodbyes from their loved ones too. I whispered, I'm ready. And for the first time since December 2024, I felt truly alive. I sat there, in my small Chicago apartment, watching snow fall outside on January 12th, 2025. Dad's Christmas sweater still rested in my hands, and, for the first time since he died on December 15th, 2024, I didn't feel alone. I'd died for 4 minutes under New Year's snow, met God, saw Dad's soul from afar, and returned with 3 secrets I can't keep to myself. Souls send energy when they leave, they linger through small signs, and they want us to keep living. I whispered, Thank you, Dad. Thank you, God. I'll live well and I'll share this story with everyone. But what about you? Have you ever felt an odd breeze, a vivid dream, or an unseen touch from a loved one who's passed? Could they be trying to say goodbye and you just haven't noticed? I almost missed Dad's farewell, but now I hear him every day. If my story's got you wondering, drop a comment below. What strange things have you experienced after losing someone? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more spiritual stories, and tap the bell for the next video. I'd love to hear from you. Let's uncover the secrets beyond death together.